I will let you all, it is our closing speaker tonight at the A.Richard Newton Distinguished Innovator Lecture Series, a Berkeley Changemaker course. It is my pleasure that our student coordinator, Rishi Modi, is in conversation with the always surprising and exciting co-founder of Box, Aaron Levie. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'll let, I guess that word surprising is in mind because I keep seeing it from the earnings call, but I'll let Rishi do our more formal introduction.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vicky. So kind of get things started, I'll just kind of, I think we'll maybe take a step back and kind of give an introduction to Aaron's background. So he actually grew up on Mercer Island, small suburb outside of Seattle. And then in 2003, he enrolled at USC. But he always had sort of that entrepreneurial spirit during his teenage years. Accordingly, he actually launched about 15 companies, one of them called ZipZap, which he jokingly called the fastest search engine on the internet, besides Google, right? And since then, in 2004, with his major still undecided, Aaron accepted an internship at Paramount Pictures in LA and eventually launched Box in 2005 with his childhood friend, Dylan Smith, who attended school over on the East Coast at Duke. Aaron soon after dropped out of USC to pursue the company full-time, incorporated Box while operating in Mercer Island, and then they moved to Berkeley, California. But in the early days of the company, the team struggled to obtain early seed funding due to strong competition in the industry. And fortunately, Aaron was able to connect with billionaire Mark Cuban and was able to secure his first angel investment. As with many other startups in the mid-2000s, their primary focus was on the individual consumer. But as we've seen kind of with our sort of theme for the course, they eventually transitioned to the enterprise cloud storage. And so Box continued to grow throughout the late 2000s. Revenue increased by over 500%. And in January 2015, Box began trading publicly on the NYSE with one of the largest IPOs of 2015. And that gave the company a valuation of about 1.6 billion. But unfortunately, you see, the journey of being a public CEO hasn't always been a smooth sailing, really easy. And you actually face strict pressure from shareholders and even facing a proxy fight with activist investors. But today, Box has grown to a global company with over 100,000 customers for its cloud-based content management, collaboration, and file sharing tools. And so outside of Box, Aaron is an avid reader, recent crypto advocate, and also very active on Twitter. So we're really excited to host such a distinguished innovator. And to take a step back, let's kind of look to where everything really began. So I saw you grew up in Seattle. So then what led you to enrolling in Southern California? It's not Silicon Valley, of course. So could you maybe share a bit more about your time in college? What did you study? How was it?
Yeah, no, appreciate it. And great, very robust and 99% accurate intro. So so that was very strong. And I maybe would modify a couple things. I'd say I'm a you said crypto advocate. I would say I am I'm probably more of just a studying crypto. But I'm not yet in a position to advocate for it. But other than that, it seemed very aligned to Box's history. So so I went to USC. Initially, actually, I was trying to get into film school at SC, and I had gotten really into two completely different interests in high school. One was business and technology, and the other was film. And so I wanted to go to film school, and they didn't let me in to film school at USC. But I figured the next best thing was if I went down there and studied business, then maybe you could get into the production side or distribution side of the entertainment industry. And as I was at USC, I did some internships in the media industry, and at the same time was building tech companies on the side, which is what I'd kind of done in the past. And ultimately decided that the media industry had a bunch of challenges, a bunch of flaws, and it was more exciting and fun and thrilling to build tech startups and tech ideas. And so eventually decided to build Box, and so yeah, we launched it out of USC and have been working on the idea ever since 2005. And I think we lost Rishi. Is that technically accurate?
Oh no, I will hop in again.
Okay.
So yeah, I had done this chart, so technically accurate 2005. I'm not sure exactly what the question was. At least that's what I have for the chart.
Oh, this chart is totally great. I was just the crypto advocate part I modified slightly, but the timeline was perfect.
I love how of all people, you're kind of pulling back from the crypto advocacy. But it's interesting to put this chart up because, Aaron, we have had so many different speakers throughout the semester who have had so many different positions, and it's really unusual to see one. I mean, the big thing, I mean, obviously Rishi was talking about some of the other things that you've done, but it's kind of amazing that you have had this longevity in doing what you've been doing. Like what, I am curious, and this is not in our prepared questions, but what is it that keeps you doing it? It's a long time. We're like 15-year anniversary, actually 17.
Yeah. Well, certainly 17 years since we've been thinking about the problem, which sounds crazy. But basically, I think what makes it exciting is that, and this is actually probably the single biggest lesson I would impart on anybody starting a business. If you can choose to start a business in a market that kind of there's no way to actually fully solve the problem that you're trying to solve. In that there will always be a new set of challenges that customers will face in the future. It's actually one of the most satisfying and exciting things in business, because there's always a new challenge that your customers are going to face that you need to now build your technology for. And so we chose a market, actually probably inadvertently. We didn't really know that this would be a characteristic, but we chose a market that kind of has no terminal point. What we are in the business of doing is helping businesses manage their most important information and their most important content, whether that's financial data or media assets and making a new film or schematics for a new product, or just collaborating on project plans. And all of the way that we work around content was different 10 years ago and 15 years ago, and it's different today, and it'll be different in 10 years from now and 15 years from now. And what that means is that there's always some exciting new challenges that we get to go address. That makes it very exciting. So I'd say that I could see doing this for quite a bit longer, simply because of how broad the surface area is, and how the fact that the challenges only continue to increase, that we can go and solve, and that just makes it continue to be very, very exciting.
I guess you weren't always focused on the enterprise. So I believe in your early days, focused on the consumer. So what led to that shift? Why starting the consumer, cloud storage? I mean, very early industry, and then eventually transition over.
Yeah, so we started as a really kind of a consumer and personal product, just based on the needs that we saw in our own lives when we were starting the company. And then we eventually, as we dropped out, and as you mentioned, Mark Cuban funded the company. And I don't remember if you called this out or not, if we got this far, but we actually ran the business out of Berkeley for the first 8 to 9 months or so. We were on Ashby and Shattuck Avenue. When we dropped out of college and moved from LA to Mercer Island, then down to Berkeley, we spent a lot of time thinking about the future of our business and our customer base. And we decided to pivot the company from focusing on consumers to focusing on the enterprise market. And we saw that there would be substantially more disruption opportunity in the enterprise market. There'd be more revenue. We could differentiate better as a platform, and we would have a much more sustainable business model by focusing on enterprises over the long run. And it was interesting because it was something that, frankly, I didn't want to do initially. It was really my co-founders that pulled me into that, and they kind of said, "Hey, we have to pivot the company, or we will not succeed in the future." And I was resistant at first, but ultimately they were absolutely correct that it was the right move, and it was definitely the time to do it.
I mean, working with co-founders. Oh, sorry, Vicky.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe you're on the same wavelength, Rishi. I'm thinking that conversation must have been really hard to have with you, maybe with anybody. How did it go down?
It was probably more like 30 to 50 conversations, and there was probably no single epiphany, as much as my co-founders and early employees just incessantly, saying that we had to pivot the company. And actually, one of the early folks that led to it, our 5th employee, was getting his MBA at Haas, and he was one of the biggest advocates of pivoting the company and the business model. And so, I think it was my co-founders or some early employees that really, kind of led to us deciding to go focus on the enterprise market. But eventually, kind of emotional, reaction aside, it was just actually the rational thing to do. The market was bigger, there would be more dollars, you could differentiate better, we could drive more innovation. And so it was just, when you studied the business rationale, it was a much more strategic decision to go in that direction.
You all were young. I mean, I think that your co-founder had I think he went back to Duke and graduated.
He did, yeah.
But I mean, how on earth would you have that much wisdom? I'm sorry, I'm constantly impressed by students. I'm obviously older, but how do you think you had that much wisdom? Or how does that happen? What kind of background do you have to have in order to be able to make such a huge decision?
Well, I think, you know, it was probably only an extreme amount of curiosity. So studying every possible business that I could find that we eventually would want to look like. So reading every book, meeting every possible person I could, watching every video, at least, you know, in later years when YouTube finally got invented, on every business out there. And so, you know, on one end, you're kind of learning a ton. On the other end, you know, one of the benefits of a company that is sort of scaling and you're starting to build out and you're getting more growth is you get the ability to then hire amazing people that can help augment and supplement things that you don't know. And so you know, 99% of all of the good decisions in the company were ideas from other people. I may have made the decision because as CEO, you have to make a lot of the calls, but the idea was generated from somebody else who had the experience. And you really end up being in a position where as a CEO or founder, you're taking in lots of inputs. Those inputs could be what's happening in the market, what are lessons, what are case studies of what companies have done in the past, what are employees you know, recommending you do. You're taking those inputs and then you're making a series of decisions. And some of those decisions are wrong. And those you hope and you pray that you can pivot quickly. Some of the decisions are right. And for those, you want to continue to double down. And you're kind of, you know, it's kind of like machine learning almost. Like you're doing as much sort of adaptation and testing, you know, different scenarios, and the algorithm is learning, and you're kind of dropping the things that didn't work and you're doubling down on the things that do. And, you know, doing that in a compounding way over many years, eventually you're able to build a durable business, assuming that you have the right team and you made the right decisions and you're in a market that is interesting and attractive. And that's what we fortunately were able to make happen.
And so I guess with taking all this information, you're trying to analyze it, synthesize, and, you know, choose and pick and choose what's really valuable to you. Was there any piece of advice that like really stuck with you, or even any books, maybe The Innovator's Dilemma, or can you maybe touch upon that, really, like what really influenced you in the early days of building the company?
Yeah, I think a series of books. You know, if I were anybody on this call, you know, thinking about starting a company, I would read a handful of books just on day one. Innovator's Dilemma, immediately I would read before anything else. Like if you could start reading it tonight, you'll be better for it. So that's sort of one. I think, oh, this is cool. Okay. So Innovator's Dilemma, I think, is the defining book of the technology industry of how to build disruptive ideas, and happy to get into some of the kind of applied use cases of it. Blue Ocean Strategy is a fantastic book if you're thinking about characteristics of markets and how to evolve your product to capitalize on different areas in the market. There's a great book called 7 Powers that gets into really deep business strategy and how you would generate more kind of strength in your competitive advantage. And then there's plenty of other books. You know, Peter Thiel has a good book, 0 to 1, about, you know, about kind of early company formation. And there's many others, but you know, the great thing is that so many companies that have built up and scaled, there's been great literature written about. You know, great writings about those journeys that you can, you know, read and quickly accelerate your development as an entrepreneur or as a business person.
So Vicky, do you mind actually putting up that slide again for a second? I was just gonna say, I mean, which one out of these 5 principles like relates to you most back then, and then how do you think it's changed now?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Oh, just asking, like, which one do you think was most valuable, or which one like true to you back then, you know, like 5-10 years ago, and then has it changed now? Is it still the same principle, or is there a different one?
Yeah, I think so it's the biggest principle that I would say that I've learned from Innovator's Dilemma is that you have these markets that start to sort of ossify over time, where you have incumbents in a market and they've produced a solution for their customers, and they're very, very happy because those solutions are profitable and their customers are happy, and so you continue to get better and better at building things for your current customers. But as you have generational changes, or as you have technology shifts, sometimes there's a set of customers that where the incumbent solution is actually too powerful for their needs. And so there needs to be a new entrant in the market that will deliver something that's simpler or faster or easier or cheaper than the incumbent. And that is an ongoing auto-refreshing cycle in the tech industry. Every single month, every single quarter, every single year that happens in the technology market. And so your job as an entrepreneur is to find out where those opportunities exist, where maybe there's an incumbent in the market that is whose technology is too complicated or too advanced or too expensive, and where you can build something that's simpler or faster or cheaper. And you kind of are always doing that in this industry. And that's the cycle of innovation that we're constantly seeing. And so that's the kind of core essence of Innovator's Dilemma is how to both do that as well as respond to that in case you are the one being disrupted. And that remains as true today as it did 20 plus years ago when the book was initially written.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're testing a lot of assumptions, seeing these existing platforms, and then if there's opportunity for disruption or there's a gap in the market. But then at the end of the day, we all have assumptions as entrepreneurs, right? We all have beliefs like, this is my view, my perspective on a market. I'd love to hear a bit more about how do you test these assumptions, or how do you go through the customer discovery process, especially in the early days of validation. It might be really important for students, as they're trying to test out these ideas, go try to talk to customers, but there's not really been much guidance behind that. So yeah. Any words or this advice?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's very hard to test assumptions with customers. What I would generally recommend is to gather information about your customers' problems, and then you have to make bets, and you have to make some bets on what possible solutions are there to those customer problems. The customer is likely never going to give you the exact solution to their problem, and they're probably, if they only hear of the idea, they probably won't be particularly accurate in telling you whether the idea will be helpful for their problem either. And so this idea of sort of testing, with sort of in a kind of simulated way is very, very difficult. And that's actually why building a successful company is not a frequent occurrence, and why it's actually kind of relatively hard to do. And if it was easy, then there would be no differentiated returns, if you invest in a startup, because everybody would be building startups and they'd all be successful. And so no one would be that valuable. So ultimately, it's very hard to sort of get a customer to kind of theoretically help you through this journey. All you can do is go to a customer and understand their problem and attempt to build a solution that you think is a better solution to that problem than anything else that are on the market. And if you can do that, and then you can get that into the hands of your customers, and you can scale that, then you might have an idea, and you might be onto a startup idea that could work.
I think those are all very important points, very valid. And apart from the sort of customer discovery, understand your needs and try to fill them, it's also fundraising. It's very difficult, especially for someone coming right out of college, doesn't have that sort of experience, that work track record. Could you talk a bit more about your struggles, your challenges? I know you mentioned emailing Mark Cuban, but what led you, I guess, what was the main reason why it was so difficult, especially in those early days?
Yeah, I think, you have to have a lot of conviction about your idea to both be able to pitch investors, but certainly to get through all the difficult challenges that you're going to face as a startup. So we had a lot of conviction that our business was going to work. We didn't know for a fact that it would be us that would deliver this idea successfully to the market, but we knew that it would be, somebody would build this idea at some point in the future and it would work. That we knew that for a fact. It was sort of destined from a technology architecture standpoint to be the better way to manage data. So we knew that unequivocally. We didn't know that we would be the ones to deliver it. We had a lot of ego and confidence, but we were also kind of practical that like lots of startups fail. So obviously, you know, there's a reason for that, and we may not be any better than anybody else, but we'll give it our best shot. And so we pitched lots of investors. And you know, the way that these stories get written is we always talk about the investor that said yes. In this case, it was Mark Cuban, but we had dozens of investors that said no. And so that kind of proves that these things are entirely you know, sometimes very circumstantial and sometimes you know, somewhat even random, not in a sort of a kind of a cosmic lucky kind of way, but just like you have to just you have to attempt to have your best odds possible. And the way to have your best odds possible, because you can roll the dice as many times as you want when you're pitching investors, is just to pitch as many investors as you can. And to pitch as many you know, early team members as you can, and to pitch as many customers as you can. And so if you can roll the dice you know, roll the die enough times, then eventually it might come up in your favor. And every time that happens, you double down on that. And Mark Cuban was a great example of that. We pitched lots of investors that said no, and we pitched Mark and he said yes, and we fully capitalized on that, and that helped us scale the company.
Yeah, it seems like
it's so easy to say we pitched, but do you remember what you did or what you tweaked that seemed to be a better hook?
I honestly don't think we tweaked anything. So I mean maybe there's minor elements that we learned from when some people said no, and then they asked certain questions, and then we would modify it a little bit, but there was no fundamental thing that sort of caused one investor to say yes and the other investor to say no. I mean, this is how crazy, you know, this is like, you know, an investor can wake up on the right side of the bed one day and decide that your business is the greatest thing since sliced bread, or they might not. And there's you know, there's a really funny thing. Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, published some of his investor rejection emails a couple of years ago, and it gives you a sense. I mean, you know, Airbnb is a $100+ billion company today. It's revolutionized travel and hospitality. I'm sure all of us on this call have done at least one Airbnb stay. And now it sort of seems as a given that, oh, of course it's a great idea. But, you know, 10 years ago, it seemed insane. And so they had investors just say no, 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 no. And eventually a couple said yes, and they got more growth. And then a couple more said yes, and they got more growth. And then now it looks like obviously the best investment of all time, and that some people were smarter than other people. Well, by definition, they were smarter than other people in retrospect. But Brian and Airbnb executed marvelously, and it all kind of worked out. But the key is that Brian didn't give up. You know, he just kept executing, and you have to, if you have enough conviction about your idea, you just have to not give up. Now there's one giant asterisk on this, which is your idea might be bad, and maybe you should give up. And nobody can ever tell you if that's true or not. That's a sort of self-reflection thing that largely can only occur in your own introspection and your own, you know, sort of development of the conviction of your idea. But this is not advice to say no matter what, you know, continue to push forward, because some ideas literally are bad and they're not going to work. but you know, it's impossible to know, you know, in any kind of generality, because I think 15 years ago, if we had been, you know, kind of like, if you could have created a hypothetically bad business, it would have been having people stay in random people's homes and a website that you punch in and you look for those homes. Like that would have been categorically a bad idea 15 years ago, but it ended up being the most brilliant idea of all time. And it was because of their conviction and because of their execution that led that to happen.
So I guess in terms of how the venture world has changed, you know, going back to, you know, mid 2000s to today, it seems that like Airbnb, you know, they're still based in the Bay Area, but a lot of these new companies, you know, based in Miami and Texas and Israel. Could you talk a bit more about how the venture world has changed, especially since COVID?
Yeah, well, I think you know, it stands to, you know, one of the funniest things, I guess, of the tech industry is that the internet is by definition everywhere. I mean, with another asterisk of you know, in at least the major markets that you would think about, and talent can be distributed everywhere. I think we would generally all agree that you know, the quality of talent is sort of not geographically concentrated on a percentage basis. There's talent everywhere. And there is on a volume basis because of population density, but on a percentage basis, there's talent everywhere. So if you have internet everywhere and talent everywhere, it's kind of almost a bit of an aberration in how you would imagine things would evolve, that Silicon Valley somehow had kind of this lock on the tech industry. And I think what we're now seeing, maybe driven by COVID, but some other big trends, that's not going to be the case in the future. And there's probably, we will in 5 and 10 years from now, I think largely not even be talking about cities as sort of hubs of innovation, simply because there'll be too many to count. And you can literally go anywhere and start a business anywhere and have talent anywhere. I'm actually still I favor in-person collaboration, but I don't think that Silicon Valley is going to have a lock on being the only hub in the world where that kind of collaboration, that kind of talent congregates. And so I think you're going to see it happen everywhere. And I think in 20 years from now, the world will look a lot more diffuse of ideas and innovation, startups and technology companies all around the world.
Innovation's everywhere. I feel like that's kind of the key takeaway there. I mean, you think about innovation centers in Berkeley, Stanford. Well, it's not just universities. I mean, since we've gone remote, it's really amazing to see how distributed and how amazing it's kind of going. But I feel that it's also a reflection in terms of how public markets are also changing, and maybe shifting gears from looking at your early days, the startup founder, now towards being a leader of a publicly traded company. First of all, congrats on your earnings. Obviously, very positive outlook. So kind of round of applause there. But besides that, it hasn't been necessarily an easy journey, right? So maybe could you talk about your challenges from your rocky IPO onwards?
Yeah, I think it's not easy, and again, it's not supposed to be easy. If it were easy, then it would be you wouldn't have the risk reward kind of profile that is associated with startups, and that's because it is risky and it's hard and it's complicated and messy. And so we had an IPO process that was messy because the market kind of corrected. When there's a correction in the market, i.e., the market kind of comes down, it's a really bad time to do an IPO because you want a lot of momentum in the market when you're issuing new stock to public investors. So there was market correction, and we had some difficulty there. We've had ups and downs in the stock over the years. Sometimes, we grow faster than we thought. Sometimes we grow more slowly than we thought. And you have some volatility as a result of that. We had an activist investor, which really is, I actually see activism as a positive thing in the capital markets or the public stock market, because it allows there to be kind of some tension and some different perspectives in the system. But when it's happening to you, obviously, you don't get as excited about it. And we had a really strong partnership with our activist investor, and then we had less of a partnership, and so things went toward a shareholder vote. We were very happy with the results of the shareholder vote, and because the shareholders voted for our board of directors to continue to forward. But there's again been very bumpy, lots of ups and downs. We definitely are in a really strong spot right now to keep executing, but it's not easy, and it's not supposed to be. And that's actually partly what makes it so much fun.
Yeah, and I guess maybe touching a bit more on the board of directors. So we had Padma, obviously a board director of Box, and so it'd be interesting for students to understand, like, what's a good dynamic between the board of directors? What's their role? How do they kind of govern the company? So delineation between CEO, C-suite, and then I guess that sort of board of directors.
Yeah, so Padma used to be on the board, and she had to exit a couple years back, but she was a fantastic board member. And usually you want a board, if possible, to have a couple key characteristics. One, you want a board of individuals that can help you see around corners, and so your board is kind of, they can kind of shine a light on your future self, and because they've seen certain things that maybe you haven't, and they can tell you how to get to the future state you want to get to faster, or more predictably. And so that's one thing that a really well-constructed board can help you do. Another good thing that a board can do is help, kind of push you and hold you accountable to results. By definition, you work for the board, and the board can fire you. And so, a lot of people have this perception that founders are kind of all all powerful, but it's just not true. You get fired if you're not doing your job, or if you screw up royally. And so it's good to have that kind of accountability in the system, and have a strong board of directors that can hold you accountable to the business results and to building a high quality organization. So again, that's sort of the role of the board. Help you see the future and see around corners, push you on strategy, and hold the organization accountable to ultimately the shareholders. That's what the board's job ultimately is.
So I guess one interesting strategy that we've seen a lot of companies, especially in the recent years, adopt is actually corporate social responsibility. So CSR or like ESG initiatives. ESG is a huge thing, especially within Berkeley. So have you or the board of directors kind of pushed forward on that in any sense?
Yeah, we do a lot of ESG internally, both within the company as well as in the board of directors, and it is an important and will be continue to be a fixture of how businesses run in the future.
That's great. And I guess kind of shifting gears a little bit more, but one thing we kind of interested is actually in terms of operations within the company. Have you made any really tough decisions? Have you had to fire anybody? How was that process? I mean, any like failures besides, kind of the boardroom is besides, kind of organizational, like that sort of suite right there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do, unfortunately, a bit of that as you scale. So there's always tough decisions. There's always difficult choice points, strategically or personnel or stock market wise. My best sort of way of working through those challenges are always to step back and think about what is the best decision for the long run, and the health of the company over the long run. And there's a lot of decisions that maybe tomorrow will be easier to make in a particular direction, but in 5 years, 3 years, or 5 years, or 10 years are actually going to be the wrong decision. And so we are always trying to think about where do we want to be in the future, and what decision today is going to be the best decision to get us there. And that's a way that we can kind of work through very difficult and hard decisions a lot of the time.
So where do you plan to be in the next 5 years? What's the North Star look like? Obviously, you made a ton of progress from startup to now, but it's only just the beginning. So
yeah. Well, I think what we get excited about is we're entering a phase of innovation in the tech industry that is unlike any sort of period that I can recall, around what you can do with cloud computing, what you can do with the future of work, new possible devices that we'll use to do our work, from new ways that we want to collaborate and communicate all around the world. And so if I think about in 5 years from now, we're focused on building a platform that can be the absolute best at helping companies manage their most important content in no matter how people are working in the future. And so I can't tell you exactly what the world looks like in 5 years from now. Maybe it'll be Zuckerberg's vision of the future. Maybe it'll be Tim Cook's vision of the future. Maybe it'll be Sundar's vision of the future. But our job is to make sure that we're building a platform that lets you work with your content no matter what future plays out. And that's what we're super focused on.
So I guess also in terms of future, I mean, any key trends you think we should be looking out for, or maybe better yet, what do you think is the equivalent of cloud storage in the early 2000s today?
I think I would say that I'll give you a heuristic to use. In 2005, when we started Box, when we launched Box, the only thing in our way of growing was our own execution. It was the software we wrote, it was the design that we created, it was the user experience we created. It was all up to us to grow the business. And then we had a tailwind that propelled the market even further, which was cloud computing was getting more efficient. More people were working on mobile devices. More people were working on the web. More people were signing up for the internet to work from the internet. And so we could control our own destiny based on our execution. And then you had a sort of a force multiplier of these mega tailwinds that could further accelerate our platform. Let me distinguish that from sometimes the ideas that people get. A lot of times you have to wonder, are you too early or are you too late to a tech trend? And generally, if you're too early, it means that you as a company cannot single-handedly control your growth rate because you are dependent on some other set of events happening in the market. And so here's an example. If you bet your whole life savings on building a virtual reality company right now for the metaverse, you'll be doing that for many, many years because there's multiple things that don't exist yet that you need to get created for your business to be able to fully scale and be super successful. And so what I would be focused on is maybe you do want to be a metaverse company, maybe you do want to be a virtual reality company, but I would then focus on the part that today exists in the market that you can go and capture, that is real, that is ubiquitous, and take advantage of that and then expand over time. And I see too many, unfortunately, great ideas get delivered too early for the market because you don't have the surrounding infrastructure that's been built out to make your business successful. And so I would be very thoughtful of sort of trying to find the right sort of balance of too much futuristic versus pragmatic, and sort of finding the right space in there.
I mean, those are all great pieces of advice in terms of how we should really view trends. And so we have a few student questions coming up. So one last question here, which is that if you could tell yourself something back when you were in college, what would it be? What would you do differently?
I think honestly, just move faster. Every good idea would have been a better idea if we moved faster, and every bad idea would have been better if we had pivoted more quickly. And so I think speed of execution is almost always the right answer when you're kind of looking back in hindsight.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And so I see Vicky, we have Antonin. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly.
So I guess I should just tell you what's going on, Aaron, because I know you've had a long day too. And so what we tried to do towards the end, we shift a little bit and make sure that students' different faces come on and people ask questions as they have them. Okay. So everybody, we ask you to get your questions into the Q&A and we'll bring you on. And I just want you to know, because we started a little bit later, while we're going through these questions, you'll see me flashing a code, and that is for students to give their reflection, because I know you like feedback, so I'll have it for you tomorrow. Maybe you don't like feedback, but I'll still have feedback for the students. Yes.
Wait. They're voting on my answer or the question?
No, they're just giving you feedback on the talk today.
Oh God, I don't know if I want hard feedback. I got enough hard
feedback. I graded enough, so I think I'll let Aaron take it.
No, this is too stressful. So.
Antonin, go ahead. You have a question.
Okay, hi, Aaron. Thank you very much. I had one question for you. Like, Dropbox was created like in 2007, the year like you change your business model from B2B to from B2C to B2B.
Yep.
So did its creation had an impact on your decision, or it was just like?
It was essentially completely coincidental because we didn't know that much about Dropbox at the point that we pivoted, and we were studying the risks of Google, Apple, and Yahoo getting into our market on the consumer side. And so that was the bigger risk to us of maintaining our focus on the consumer market was those big tech companies would be more disruptive to us. And so that was why we pivoted, but it wasn't due to Dropbox.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you.
David, you have a question. Did you want to come on?
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize I was on. Yeah, so Aaron, I appreciate your comments about implementation and execution, but specifically, I was wondering as to the logistics of gleaning product market fit from consumers. I actually recently read a book called The Mom Test, which was specifically talking about how to glean information from consumers without asking direct questions. And I just wanted to know how you found product market fit and how you go about this sort of specific problem.
Yeah, so I'm not too familiar with the Mom Test other than maybe what it could be based on the name of it. And my mom over the years has given me lots of feedback on our product that has been very helpful. But in general, I mean, I think this is gonna sound kind of weird, but like I think actually Silicon Valley overthinks this stuff. I think products, I think there's a continuum of really shitty products and amazing products. And all you're trying to do is move up that continuum. And it's like, there's not that much, you know, sort of, it's like, it's hard to like over, you know, kind of think it. It's like, you know, what do you like to use in a product? You want to click as few times as possible. You want to like have it be as intuitive as possible so you don't make the wrong decision. You want to not have to like type in a lot of fields. Like, I think the more that we as entrepreneurs or product managers build software the way that we would want to use it, and then throw random people at it and watch them and see what they get right or wrong, and then iterate. That's kind of it. Like that's like that one paragraph can probably get you 95% of all product development that you would need. Is build a product that you would love to use, and then just validate that you actually are building things that make sense with real humans. And if you can do that, and you continue to do that in a cycle, then that is how you continuously improve your products and your experiences. And I think to this day, that's kind of the main thing I've learned. Like, every day I'm surprised because I'll look at our own product and I'll be like, shit, that's a really bad idea. And you just like, you know, you see it from a new lens or a new perspective, or somebody mentions something and you're like, oh, that is a better way to do that. And then you iterate and you continue to improve. And that's kind of the main methodology. And so I would just stick to that. And then if you are in a space that people find compelling, then hopefully by iterating and with a good idea, you'll find product market fit. And if not, then it might be more about the idea is just not a good idea. Then somehow more execution is going to work.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck.
You okay? Do you want to take a drink of water? It's been
I'm
a
good.
long day. Okay.
Yeah.
Goose, you're on.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I appreciate you. And I just wanted to ask something. So for me, currently, I am a graduating senior. I am working on this amazing startup idea, and I have a lot of conviction. I have everything that you brought up. My team and I, we really have those values. But one of the things that is coming up is that our team is separating to different states, and we still want to work on our startup while also maintaining, you know, our jobs for financial security. So I wanted to ask you, you know, when you have a lot of responsibilities, whether if that's, you know, family, health, work, and also wanting to continue your passion in startup, what are some ways that in your life you have seen that been able to manage that?
Oh, that's hard. You know, it's I would say that it's always so personal to your particular circumstance. I would, you know, to the extent you can balance all those things, that's great. Usually something has to usually take the compromise, and so it kind of depends on what you know. If you think about it, let's say there's family, friends, work, and startup. You know, if it's perfectly balanced, probably the thing that will suffer is the startup, because the startup is the thing that is the world does not want to exist by default. Like, the world does not want your startup to work because there's too much attention spread to other things. So if you perfectly balance all of those things, your startup will be the thing that likely fails. If you need to do work and startup, then obviously your friends and family, you know, are going to pay the price. And so you just have to kind of decide which thing is sort of the optimization that you want at that particular time, and then you have to decide where to place your kind of bets, and your bets in this case are your calendar and your time. You know, it's so hard because every idea is different, every circumstance is different. Maybe you have to work, maybe you have to do the startup at the same time. I don't know, but you know, it's very, very hard to perfectly balance everything and get success in all of the characteristics. So you'll have to make that decision, and so will everybody else as they think about that. But you know, in my case, I'll give you an example. I did school, friends, startup, and an internship, and essentially I got horrible grades, and my internship, they probably should have fired me multiple times. And so what I prioritized was friends and my startup. And so those were the two things that got the kind of bulk of my attention. But everybody has to find their own kind of configuration for that to work.
Awesome. That was so great. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Okay, good luck.
Goose, I have to, I know you're going off, but I'm wondering what is on your head?
Oh,
Is it a unicorn?
Yeah, so I went to Universal Studios and my child self wanted a unicorn headband. So I am presenting myself as my authentic self here. So
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool.
there you go. Why not?
There you go.
All right. Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Thank you.
Rishi, do you want to ask Roman's question or do you want to wait on that? And we'll have Alina go.
Yeah, we can have Alina go first.
All righty, Alina.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. And I truly enjoyed the talk. So you have been very, very successful entrepreneur. And I would like to ask about how do you think yourself did 3 things right along the journey?
Just any 3 things?
Yeah, any 3 things.
All right, I would say one thing I did right was my founding team was sort of the right founding team for our job, for the problem we were trying to solve. So I'm very product oriented. I had one co-founder that was very finance oriented, and then we had a co-founder that was very software oriented, and we had a co-founder that was very infrastructure oriented. And for what we do in our business, that's sort of like the perfect combination of talent to build out Box. And so the first thing that we did right was the right configuration. The second thing that we did right, I think, was our business model, where we decided that we were going to be disruptive in the enterprise market, but through a freemium strategy where users could bring us into the organization for free, start to use it, and then we would monetize that usage later through our enterprise sales motion. So that was the second thing. And then I think the third thing probably was just the team and the culture that we were able to build out. So maintaining kind of steadfast focus on our team culture, that was really important early on.
I see. And for team culture building, did you start it with like 3 people and you started to build the culture of the company, or is it only for when you're going up to 10?
Well, actually, it was very organic and unintentional for the first probably 50 employees. And then we decided to be very explicit about it, write it down, put it in, indoctrinate ourselves and others with it. And then as we scaled, that's how we maintain our culture. But it was very organic in terms of how we got to the initial culture that we landed on. And that was not, we were lucky that there was largely good cultural aspects of what we wanted, but it was not particularly intentional or explicit. It just kind of happened in a very organic way.
I see. Thank you so much. That helps a lot.
Yeah, appreciate it.
How along that lines with like establishing a team culture? Just kind of curious. I mean, in the days before Zoom and everything, how are you able to collaborate with your co-founder who went to Duke?
It was a lot of actually just instant messaging. So instant messaging and phone calls. And we didn't do any video conferencing. So we would just.
So it seems ironic. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, as soon as we were talking about Zoom, I think Aaron's Zoom cut out.
Yes, I think so. I noticed that there was just a little bit of a lag, but in the meantime, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And I know Aaron will come back again. He'll join us, and then Anish, you can ask your question. But in the meantime, USC to Cal, spelled capital U, capital S, capital C, number 2, capital C-A-L is the code. And Aaron will have more to say, and I think some really interesting answers. Anish, I like how you've articulated your question. And then I think, Rishi, you're going to also ask Roman's question.
I'm also back. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Anish, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I often find myself caught up in day-to-day activities like school assignments, exams, and not really focused on the big picture. How have you kept yourself focused on the big picture throughout your career?
I think sometimes it's very hard to do. Actually, you get very laser focused on the particular problem that you're trying to solve, and then you kind of lose some of the perspective. And it's actually good to lose perspective if you're solving a very constructive problem, like improving a product or solving a customer problem, it's actually great to like throw away everything and all of the noise and just zoom in. But it's actually not that great if you're making really, really hard decisions that have long-standing consequences, or where like your own morale is being affected by the decision. And then in that case, you have to actually step back and sort of ask yourself, okay, is this like, let's step back, let's look at the long-term vision of the company or what we're trying to do. And you have to then decide, is this consistent with that long-term vision? And you have to almost remind yourself of the long term. And sometimes you have to be very explicit about it. Like I'll literally go on a hike and just like with a pad of paper, go on a hike and just write down like what do we want to do in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, and just to level set again. And it's just me and a pad of paper and a pen, and you're just doing it to just make sure that you get rid of the daily sort of noise and complications. And so sometimes, again, you're hyper-focused on a task at hand. Sometimes you're stepping back. And a part of the challenge is to figure out and get your feel for which mode do you need to be in that particular moment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rishi, you want to ask Roman's question?
Right. I guess 1 second before I ask Roman's question, Aaron, are you hiring new grads, internships? I feel like that's on the top of mind for many students.
We definitely are. So so if you check out our careers page, definitely see if there's any roles that make sense. We have hundreds of Cal alum that have come through the company. So we'd love to have you as well.
Awesome. And so I guess with Roman's question, I know you touched a little bit on terms of your perspectives on crypto, but Roman was asking, so any warnings or intuitions for the future of crypto? Do you think it'll take over fiat or burn out when government coins start coming out? Pretty specific.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you say it one more time?
Yeah. So Roman was asking, do you have any warnings or intuitions for the future of crypto? Do you think it'll take over fiat currencies or burn out when the government coins start coming out?
That's really funny.
I think Roman's here. I think he can join.
Roman's going to pop in? Okay.
Let's try that.
Is Roman popping in?
I'm trying to add him in. Let's give me 1 second here. Here we go.
All right, Anish, I'm putting you back to attendee.
All right, there he is.
Hi there. Sorry about that. I was walking my dog and my internet's also a little bit spotty. It seems to be plaguing all of us, unfortunately. But you mentioned you're a little bit into academically researching crypto. And just for the market scene as general, I was wondering, where do you see the future of crypto? Do you see it overtaking, regular fiat currency as the predominant method? Or do you see, with a lot of government developing their own cryptocurrencies to replace their fiat currency, that crypto will sort of burn out and die? It's its fade right now, but once there's official GovCoin, that's going to take over the market.
That's funny. You're based on the question and the depth of it. I have a feeling you have spent more time thinking about crypto than I have. So I'm gonna guess you have the better answer for this. But I am not. I think there's an extreme tension with the regulatory environment and the fact that governments really can't control their central finance system as things go fully crypto and decentralized. And so, it's a funny thing because on one hand, it sort of feels like, well, are governments going to be Luddites and not sort of see the power of this technology? On the other hand, it's such a new phenomenon, and one of the government's essential duties is to maintain stability within their country. And so if all of a sudden your currency can be impacted by massive fluctuations happening elsewhere in the system, that could be that could be a disadvantage for some of the stronger economies, and there might be an advantage for some of the weaker economies or some of the up and coming economies, but it would be very, very possibly disadvantageous if you're a strong economy that has really maybe sort of robust central banking kind of mechanisms. And so this is like, I mean, frankly, if I were running the US government, I would be like throwing up my hands, not knowing what the hell to do, because this is a very disruptive force. And and so that's the challenge. So I can't predict the future on this one, simply because it's so complicated and so intergovernmental. And I would just say that it's interesting to watch. I certainly wish everybody participating in the market the best of luck. But I'm more of a bystander and just a student of the technology itself of blockchain, as opposed to a person that has any views on the fiat kind of angle here.
Awesome. I had one quick follow-up question. I know there's another question, but
sure.
When Rishi was introducing you earlier, you made a quick point to mention that you're not a crypto advocate. Does your role as CEO, and with Box becoming so large, influence your thinking that if I come out as a crypto advocate, that's a strong position that reflects my company, so you have to walk that very fine line?
No, actually, I am so sorry. My computer is trying to tell me to get off Zoom today after 12 hours of Zoom meeting. So I apologize. It's my second crash in a row, but I don't know if I fully answered the crypto question, but basically my answer was I can see the pros, I can see the cons, and I am in wait and see mode to see how things play out.
Aaron, we'll take one more question, I think, from Rusha, and then let you and your computer go.
No worries.
Hi, yeah, I just had a quick question. So did you receive mentorship in the beginning of your career? And if yes, how has that impacted your entrepreneurial journey? And then also, do you have any advice for budding entrepreneurs like us, and how we can get mentors?
Yeah, I think I did definitely. I didn't have exactly mentors in the we had some board members that ended up kind of mentoring me. So there was sort of a formal mentorship. But what I tried to do is, as often as possible, take advantage of anybody I could meet and ask them very specific questions about specific problems where they might have expertise in that area, as opposed to just sort of a general mentor. But I definitely did benefit from people that had built companies that were willing to spend time on things like management issues and operational challenges and product strategy things as appropriate as we scaled. And I think that mentorship is super important, for building out a company. And so I think my best advice would be, try and as you're scaling up, reach out to people that are dealing or have dealt with problems that you are facing, and see if you can just even bug them for 10 minutes and make it as easy on them as possible for getting quick feedback and help. That's at least what I found to be successful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Good luck.
Aaron, thank you so much for being with us. I know you don't want the feedback, but I like seeing the feedback from
okay,
students.
fine. No, I'll take it.
But I totally get it. But we've had our own issues with the quiz. I just added another quiz that says last speaker, November 30th, Aaron. I appreciate your being with us. Congratulations on a good week. Happy Hanukkah. And we'd love to host you at Cal if you ever want to come back over to Berkeley again.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll be in your neighborhood at some point. I'd love to make it. And great to see so many amazing entrepreneurial folks out there. And good luck on all of your endeavors as you build stuff.
Thank you, Aaron. Rishi and I are going to stay on if there are questions from our students, and I'll go ahead and post the code again. And you and your family have a good night.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care.
All right. See you guys.
I'll go ahead and post my screen again so people can see, I hope. Hopefully I can. And I'm happy to stay on if there are questions. Did anybody notice I put another quiz up without a passcode, actually? Can you see that, Rishi?
Here, well, I'm not sure I can see it because I'm also a creator.
Jocelyn Wang, when you say yes, do you mean yes, you can see the quiz that has no code? Yes, just ignore the old one because it's not working. Thanks,
Fine.
Jocelyn. Perfect. So in honor of our last day, actually, I won't even post that passcode because it doesn't matter. Anybody can get into the quiz. It says November 30th, and I just ask you for some feedback for Aaron. It has been a pleasure having everybody. I hope I see some of you again next semester. And even though Rishi says he is kind of gone, he's going to still be helping us, probably because he can sleep late and still make it to the 5 p.m. Newton series. So hope to see some of you at iHouse. We'll be in the Chevron Auditorium Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. in person, sometimes on Zoom, and I will send you all a note so that you can join us for Lars Moravi. So which quiz do you do, Sakish? The only quiz that seems to be able to work is the one I just put up, and there is no passcode. Yep, just that one question. Wishing everybody best of luck in their exams, year-end projects. Thank you in advance for your reflection. They're due at the latest December 10th. Be great if you got it in early. Don't stress, just a paragraph or two on something that impacted you.